I'm your Gemini friend. So this is just something that's been on my mind and I wanted to talk about, which is the water houses, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th. I know that we think of houses as kind of separate, but the entire zodiac is a progression and a cycle. And when we're starting at Aries in the 1st house and we're finishing at Pisces in the 12th house, it's a start of a cycle and the finish of a cycle, but it renews. It keeps going around. The end of Pisces in the 12th house leads into a new cycle, a new version of us. But specifically with the water houses, this is about how we process emotions, but also like deeper trauma and things that we keep within us. So what I'm going to talk about here is why healing is not linear and how to kind of use your placements and your chart to help you figure out the best way to heal, and also just to give yourself grace and forgiveness and like accept yourself for not getting over things immediately, because that's not even how it's set up. And I will mention, if you want a synastry or natal chart reading from me, I do offer that, and there's information in the description. But getting into this, so getting over things, healing, processing our emotions, like I said, it's not linear. It's not just we recognize something, we process it, and we get over it, and we move on. It's rarely that simple. We tend to get things in patterns and layers that we have to peel back, things that we have to work through that will come back even when we think we've already worked through it. So the nature of the water houses, just starting with the 4th house, this is Cancer and the moon. This is our roots, our emotional foundation, and how we're really shown to process our feelings. This is going to represent how emotions were modeled to us, how emotional expression was shown from our family, from our parents, from our mother, the more maternal parent, whoever your guardian was that felt like that one that was more nurturing, but also the overall family environment. This can also be ancestral. This can be patterns that you were born with just because of the family you were born into. It's completely representative of how we were nurtured or how we were not nurtured, how we were taught to process our emotions at the earliest point, that imprint. So what this represents is the origin of our feelings. Then moving into the 8th house, this is Scorpio and Pluto. The 8th house represents privacy, power, control, loss, change. It's really about our emotional instincts and that more primal side of us that's linked to survival and linked to having our needs met, and maybe the things that we picked up on that might lead to us not having our needs met, that we have to suppress. Parts of ourselves we might have to hide, and the relationship that we have with things that we do feel like we need to hide, or things that are under the surface that maybe we're not allowed to address, but we are intended to transform eventually. This can be the hardest stuff to look at because it's not just surface level pain. This house is representative of crisis and how we handle it and really how we survive overall. But the thing with this is that we don't just get over everything at once. We keep all sorts of things inside us, things that feel like they might never even be seen or addressed. And when something feels like it is too intense or too much for us, this is when Neptune comes in. The 12th house, this is Neptune, Pisces, and the way that I really see Neptune is that it's a protector for us. Neptune takes those things that started in the 4th house, made it to the 8th house, and maybe we haven't overcome it. Maybe we don't know how to process it, how to address it, how to even look at it. The 12th house represents what's hidden and what is unconscious, underneath the surface, what we're not looking at because it's essentially been hidden from us. Like I said with Neptune as a protector, I really see Neptune as something that hides certain things from us and keeps it there in our 12th house, latent, waiting until it's time to address it. And that's why Neptune can be such a sticky and confusing energy, because we can keep hiding it. Neptune is associated with transcendence and spirituality and our deep soul connection, but it's also associated with confusion, delusion, illusions, hiding. So there are all of these different little tendencies and patterns that we can have that actually hide things from us. And the things that Neptune are protecting us from, they could very well overwhelm us. These can be things that maybe we're too young to really understand or look at or be able to handle, to look at or understand or to know what to do with. But that's why this is a cycle, and that's why we continue to go throughout this cycle, always going back through the water houses. So if you think of the fourth house as things that we might bury out of need, out of what we were taught, but they become a very core thing for us. Moving into the eighth house, we can resist it or we can transform it. But this is where it's really key to have that self-understanding, the reflection and the acceptance, the grace, because we're not going to be able to handle absolutely everything every time we go around the cycle. Things that are too intense for the eighth house, they get swept into the 12th. And those 12th house things, they're always going to be there on some level. The way that we're operating, it's kind of influenced by this behind the scenes. But every time we make it around, it's like we grow a little bit, we become more familiar with things, and we become stronger. So if the fourth house is the origin, the eighth house is the crisis, the 12th house is the potential for release. But the thing with cycles is that you always get another chance. And that's why healing isn't linear. Because we have layers, we have parts of us that we're going to address at certain times. We can have transits happen that really pull something out of us, or major life events, all sorts of things that it basically uncovers things when we're ready. So don't feel bad if you're not ready or if you're not completely over something, because it takes time. We just get a little bit more self-awareness, a little bit more understanding every time we go through this cycle. And looking at your Neptune placement and also your moon placement, this can show you so much about what your coping mechanisms are, how we might protect ourselves, our emotions, our softer parts from difficult external things and difficult things that are within us. It's just about balancing the protection of Neptune with the revelation, the transcendence, and the acceptance, self-acceptance that it takes to go there. Because healing, so much of it involves forgiving ourselves. And that's not necessarily because we've done something wrong, but more because we can carry so much shame, so much self-loathing, and just internalized bad feelings about ourselves because we feel bad. So you are under no obligation to forgive anybody, but please forgive yourself. Recognize where you're holding things against yourself, and even where you're upset with yourself for not getting over something fast enough. Because even if it seems like you're just on a loop, you're going over the same wounds over and over, maybe you're actually cycling deeper, spiraling inwards, or even thinking of it as like an upward spiral staircase, until you're reaching the point where your soul feels safe enough to go there. You know what it's like to kind of like circle something, you're observing it, you're getting yourself ready, but you're not quite ready to go there. It's like that. You can't expect yourself to be able to jump into deep pain immediately, but just creating that awareness, getting yourself prepared, you'll be able to go there eventually. But it is important to look at these Neptune coping mechanisms, because there can be a lot of escapism there depending on your placement and the aspects to it. Because Neptune can be about retreat, fantasizing, daydreaming, any form of dissociation, and this can happen so naturally that it's really important to be self-aware and build the self-awareness, because our problems, they're not straightforward. They're not. We're complicated, we're messy. That's just how feelings work. There's really no way to like purely categorize them. But the crazy thing is that what the 12th house represents, that vague, illusory, dream-like, surreal quality, that's actually a better way to look at issues and pain than anything that is straightforward or linear or organized. I'm just thinking about like dreams. You know, if you have a dream that you're processing through the dream, or even something that's representative of something difficult that happened to you, dreams and Pisces and Neptune in the 12th house, we're processing things in the way that technically makes sense to some part of us, maybe our soul. Maybe that's the way that we read the essence and the colors and the feelings. And it might not make sense in the front of our mind in a way that we can really rationalize, but the associations, the imagery, the surrealness of it, that's more representative of pain than anything clear or surface level. So all of this is really to say, embrace your messiness, understand that you are a layered and complex person and love yourself anyway, and don't rush to heal. Don't feel like you have to be perfect, like you have to be healed. But at the same time, don't let yourself stay back behind where you want to be just because you feel unhealed or you feel like you're not good enough or you're not ready. Of course, whatever we're ready for will be something that like we know in the moment. But sometimes we can let that pain keep us from moving forward because we don't feel good enough. We feel like we're just not complete enough to go there. And sometimes that step forward is what actually helps us. Because sometimes staying more in that retreat, it becomes stagnant. What you want to do is focus on where you feel stagnant, where you feel like you're stuck and you can't move forward. And take little steps. Try to embody the highest form of your Neptune placement. Look at that sign and that house and see what would be the most efficient way to move forward while still giving myself grace, while still feeling myself from a soul level and allowing intuition to guide me rather than all of the shoulds that the world's gonna tell you. Because sometimes we can be so confused and think we're lazy, think that we are useless, ineffective, that we're not doing anything, when in reality we are just paralyzed by pain or fear. So finding a way to step out of that paralysis, take little steps forward, things that make us feel more alive, things that make us feel more like ourselves. It doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be anything particularly efficient. It's just that when we're stuck in cycles, it can feel endless, but changing something that we do can be like the step out of it. And this is going to be so different for everybody, but I am someone who just drowns in cycles. I get trapped so easily in that kind of downward spiral where the things that feel like they help are actually making things worse, but it feels like the only thing. You know what I'm talking about? It's just that dealing with Neptune takes that balance of introspection and feeling and really just love, but also having the groundedness, recognizing that we are on Earth, we have to do things tangibly. The opposite sign from Pisces, Virgo, is all about what we can do with our hands, what we can do on a day-to-day basis in order to improve things. So looking at your 6th house as well, I do have a video that goes into how to better utilize your 6th house and understand it to create more efficiency. That I'll link in the description if you want to see that. But mostly this is just about like you can pull yourself out of things and you deserve to be out of cycles and coping mechanisms. But at the same time, I want to recognize that it's like super hard. It's incredibly hard. This is a very dense and heavy existence on this planet. So if you feel discouraged, have compassion for yourself and consider what might make you feel better. Not necessarily like you're doing more, but just feeling more like yourself, getting out of the numbness of the 12th house and moving in to start a new cycle. Look at the sign on the cusp of your 4th house, any planets in your 4th house, and see what you can do with those. And then your moon. The moon is all about comforting ourselves and making sure that we feel like we're coming from a place of being rested and nourished. And if we're not meeting those needs, then that can make it so much harder to move forward. So make sure your basic needs are met and make sure you feel like yourself before you even try to start doing anything. But sometimes just forcing ourselves anyway can kickstart things and break any cycles that we've been in. So I'm just throwing out kind of random advice that I find helps me at different times. You just feel out what feels best for you, what really feels like it's going to be effective. And sometimes the things that bother us the most are the things that we really need to look at the most, which is an 8th house thing. So this is just kind of a ramble about water houses and resurfacing issues. But just consider that your healing, it's always in motion. Maybe it's a spiral. But it's moving. Just make sure it's moving because we always want to be moving forward, and stagnancy can be one of the biggest issues with Neptune. So while it feels good to be protected, it can feel even better to face it. You're doing great. You're doing better than you think. just know that you deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel like yourself. So that's what I have to say here. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you and I love you. Bye.